All right, we back with another video, man. So let's talk about one of the most polarizing players on the Falcons roster, and that's Kyle Pitts. Ever since he was drafted 4th overall, the expectations have been sky high. We're talking about a guy who was supposed to be a unicorn, a matchup nightmare, and the future of the tight end position. But here we are a few years in, and the fan base is completely split on him. Some people still believe in Kyle. He's just a star waiting to be unlocked. They'll tell you the problems aren't on him. It's just the scheme, the quarterback play, the play calling. And then others, they think it's just time to stop making excuses. They say he doesn't separate, doesn't block, and hasn't lived up to the hype. So in this video, we're putting this all on the table. We're going to do a jury style. I'm going to present the case for Kyle Pitts, then the case against him. We'll go over the film, the numbers, the context, all of it. And then after that, I'll give you a verdict based on the evidence. And then at the very end, I'll let you know where I personally stand. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So I went back and looked at Kyle's tape, and here's what stood out to me. He's most productive when he's being used vertically and over the middle of the field, especially on those deep crosses and in cuts. That's no surprise there. That's what he did in college. That's where his size and speed can really shine. This play right here is a good example. So the Buccaneers, they're in man coverage, but they're doubling Darnell Mooney and Drake London, deservedly so. They fried them the last matchup, and that means Kyle Pitts is one-on-one on an island. And this rep right here is a great example of why he's just a mismatch nightmare. You risk putting DB on him, and he can just throw him out of the way like this, fighting through a hold, and he's gonna get open for a wide open touchdown. So this is what makes him good. But there's one problem. Despite being good on in cuts and vertical routes, he has his lowest catch rate on both of those types of routes last season. And when you watch the film, it's not even on him most of the time. Kirk Cousins just wasn't connecting with him, and there were 3 interceptions on deep balls targeting Kyle Pitts. And this is not even counting the countless overthrows and the ones that just completely died on Kirk midair. In this example, the Falcons come out in a trips nasty set where the #1 receiver is on the ball, and then backside, the isolated receiver is in a nasty split. The Saints here are in man coverage. They're going to send both of their inside linebackers while they drop their ends out. This is what you call a simulated pressure. Offensively, we've lined up Kyle backside as the nasty receiver, and he's running a skinny post. In ways, Kyle is similar to Drake London, where he can just use his big body to shield the defender from the catch. And in this situation, when he's running his route, that's exactly what he does. He gets in front of the DB, but the ball is dying on him, and also it's just a hospital pass. So what do you want him to do with that? And we saw in the first 8 weeks of the season that when he's getting the ball, he can produce, but some of these passes that Kirk was throwing, he just had no real shot at catching. This dude is a 6'6" mismatch nightmare, and somehow in 2024 he only had 13 red zone targets. That was one of the biggest criticisms that Arthur Smith had with his offense, and honestly it's fair, but that's criminal. You have a guy with that frame, that catch radius, and you're not even looking his way when the field shrinks? That's crazy. On top of that, 39 of his 47 catches, or 83% of his catches, were underneath, whether it was a check down or a static underneath route. That's not how you utilize a talent that size and that speed. That's just criminal misuse of his talent. There's still a legitimate case that Kyle Pitts is not the problem. Alright, so let's get into the other side of this argument, because not everything is on Kyle Pitts, but however, there are some things that are his fault. Let's be real, the effort just hasn't always been there. You turn on the film, and yeah, there are times where his route running is lazy, not sharp, not urgent, almost like he's going through the motions. And that's a big deal when you're talking about a guy who's supposed to be a difference maker on this team. If you're not creating separation, you're not fighting through coverage, it doesn't matter how athletic you are, you just will not get the ball on not just this football team, but any football team in the National Football League. So that's one bad thing. Blocking wise, look, we all knew we weren't going to get George Kittle, but it's a part of the job. And Pitts just doesn't bring that much to the table there. He's not moving defenders. He's not sealing the edge. He's kind of a non-factor in the run game. And that limits you from what you can do, especially in this version of the West Coast offense. So this is back in week 1 where Kyle Pitts, he's isolated at the bottom of the screen. At the top, you have a bunch set. And what the Falcons are running, they're running a bubble RPO. And what receivers and some tight ends are taught to do when blocking in the run game is to not block the corner and block the safety. That way you're forcing a corner, usually the smallest and the least willing tacklers on the field, to make a play on the ball. This play was almost executed perfectly. You had the Steelers accounting 4 people for the bubble RPO, and you had the numbers in the run game, and you were just a crack block away from breaking this run. but Kyle Pitts just did not want to go block Minkah Fitzpatrick. And this ties back to the lack of urgency and the lack of effort that we see on tape. Having him on the field early in the downs, it just really limits things that you can do from a run perspective without even tipping your hand to the defense. And having a liability in the run game like Kyle Pitts, it really limits things that you can do on early downs. And that's why we saw Charlie Warner outsnap him in the latter half of the season. Then there's a scheme fit issue. The offense we're running now is a more varied version of the West Coast system. And honestly, Pitts doesn't always fit into that cleanly. He's more of a long strider, build-up speed type of player who thrives in looser, vertical-based concepts. That's not really what this offense is about at the moment. And instead of adopting the more vertical style of West Coast offense like what Mike McDaniel does and sometimes Kevin O'Connell, he's opted to stay closer to the roots of the West Coast, kind of like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, where it's more horizontal based, where you're horizontally stretching the defense. And being in a scheme that doesn't maximize your skill set is just unfortunate. And this is the bigger picture. We have 3 players, maybe even 4, who are outproducing Kyle Pitts and are producing on a more consistent level. Bijan Robinson is the clear focal point of this offense. He had nearly 2,000 yards from scrimmage last year. Drake London has found himself a role in the offense as the power slot. He had 1,300 yards and nearly 10 touchdowns last year. Should have been a Pro Bowler. Darnell Mooney, he adds the speed and quickness that'll actually fit in this time-heavy system. He almost had 1,000 yards receiving. He could have had 1 catch in the Week 18 game. He would have had 1,000 yards. And Ray McCloud, he adds more value as a receiver and a gadget guy. Everybody in this offense has a role, but when you get to Kyle Pitts' name, you don't really have a role for him. He's not one of the main guys. He's not an auxiliary piece. Where does he fit in this offense? And it's clear that we are doing just fine without him. So we should move on because we'll be just fine. So when you look at both sides of the argument, you watch the film, you look at the numbers, and you form your own opinion. This is my verdict, and my verdict is Kyle Pitts is still a weapon, but he's on a very short leash. This is a make or break year for him, and the coaching staff knows it. He needs to show us something early, because if he's not making plays by mid-season, the front office might start looking to move on from him. And if you were to tell me to give my personal opinion, my opinion is I'm still a fan of the team at the end of the day. I'll always root for our guys to figure it out while they're here. I want to see Pitts live up to the potential that we all saw on draft night. I want him to succeed in this offense, but the clock is ticking, and this year it's really up to him. And Penix has backed him. The coaching staff has backed him, so we have to see. He has to put it out there on the field. But yeah, that's the verdict and that's my opinion. If you guys did enjoy this video, I enjoyed making it myself. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more. I will be uploading more Falcons content in the future. And with that being said, I'll see you guys later in the next video. Goodbye.